When I was 12, I had a choice to make. I could either buy World of Warcraft The Burning Crusade along with a 30-day subscription, or spend it on cosmetics in MapleStory. Regrettably, I picked MapleStory. A few years later, I bought World of Warcraft Cataclysm. Unknowingly, I joined at one of the most controversial moments in the game's history. Blizzard had completely redesigned the game in an attempt to modernise it so that it could keep up with an industry that was fast evolving. Despite the divided opinions of Cataclysm, I loved it. I played a Worgen Death Knight tank, and it became my favourite game. But there was always a burning question in the back of my mind. What was Vanilla WoW actually like? When Classic launched in 2019, my closest friends and I agreed to play it through to the end, so that we could raid together. Me, the main tank, one as a healer, and another as a damage dealer. The three amigos. And we did that. This video isn't just my take on World of Warcraft Classic. It's a story of the journey, and how it shaped my expectations for MMORPGs. I'll talk about what I believe Classic gets brilliantly right, where it falls short, and why I think the MMORPG genre is stuck looking backwards instead of forwards, as I'm noticing a worrying trend in MMOs, and it's all about Classic servers. I'm Mem, and this is the game I should have played 20 years ago. I made a character named Tank Noob, a mighty dwarf warrior. Why pick dwarf, you wonder? They are arguably the coolest fantasy race. I love the big beards, the short, stocky build, their love of ale and fellowship, their bold personalities, and the beautiful fortresses they build. If there is an option to play dwarf in a game, I'm doing it. Luckily for me, dwarves are also a solid pick for tanks. They have a racial ability called Stone Form, which removes bleeds, poisons and diseases, whilst giving you a temporary bonus to armour. It's a cooldown to use in heated moments, and it comes in clutch for me during PvP. Granted, dwarves aren't the absolute best if you want to min-max. Humans make the greatest because of their weapon skill bonuses to swords and maces. And if you read the exact number, you'd think it's minute. But at endgame, those numbers really make the difference.
Indubitably.
So, whilst I can be a bit of a sweat, I'd never betray my dwarven brethren. The reason for choosing warrior is much simpler. In Classic WoW, they are the definitive tank. Other classes can do it well, but Blizzard designed prot warriors to be the tank back in the day. I'll explain why later, because it ties in with the core philosophies behind Vanilla WoW's design. With character selection completed, the opening cinematic was beautiful. I was so happy as the whole world looked completely different. The original graphics had so much charm to them, and that distinctive style immediately pulled me in. I started Classic on launch day, so the dwarf starting zone of Donmarach was packed. The servers were absolutely rammed by the sheer volume of players. But still, there was an air of competition that inspired me to want to become the best tank or the best skill in the entire server. And that meant I needed to level fast, study hard on tanky concepts, and most of all, get geared. But that wasn't going to be easy. According to stats, roughly 2 million players participated in the initial launch for the EU region. That resulted in, well, a number of issues, such as an insane login timers and server crashes. Due to the number of concurrent players, Blizzard introduced temporary realm phasing. This created multiple layers of a zone so that the population was spread out to prevent crashing and to ensure players could, well, actually play the game. But people didn't take kindly to phasing. I mean, I didn't care. Blizzard clearly wanted to keep Classic as faithful to vanilla as practicable, but that wasn't always possible. And it was only temporary. They had to do it. Even with phasing, it was chaotic. I'm telling you, as a warrior on launch, man, I had to fight for every single mob. This is because range players like hunters could easily get your mob. I cannot express the level of anger I'd feel when I'd drive straight for a mob and then I'd see an ice bolt shoot over my little head and hit a mob that I was going for. Being a warrior and a prop tank at that on launch, that was WoW on hard mode, definitely. Questing was initially a shock to me. A lot of quests don't show up on your map, so you could easily run past one and not even know. In addition, there are long quest lines that stretch across multiple regions, so without local knowledge or actually reading them properly, you could lose out on really useful quests that give out endgame equipment and items. I love the concept of having to explore the world, read items and talk to different players in order to uncover quests and lore. However, I did end up getting frustrated sometimes because I feel the game was developed to be more tedious rather than challenging. Some NPCs don't even show the question mark above their head, and yet they would have another quest for you. Stuff like that was a bit off-putting, so I had to download a ton of add-ons to make my experience a bit better. Despite the server crashes and having to fight for every single mob, the sometimes frustrating questing system, I loved my launch experience. It was so inspiring to see all the players. I was so eager to level up and start tanking in dungeons. The storytelling aspect of this game is fun. You begin in a small enclosed area where you learn the fundamentals of movement, combat and questing. Once completed, you're cast off into a vast open world. This game does not hold your hand, which is what I always look for in a game. Quests will send you across the map, where you'll engage with strange, quirky NPCs, battle mobs, explore beautiful landscapes, and naturally find yourself teaming up with other players. The players you team up with eventually become your good friends when you start dungeoning together, trading tips, and exploring new maps with them. I didn't look up much on vanilla when I started classic. And one thing that shocked me was that mobs in this game actually deal damage. You've got to be strategic because every encounter could be your last. The combat in this game had weight to it. Especially as a warrior, you've got to be switched on. Even at low levels you have to be strategic. You've got to have an exit strategy, have cooldowns ready to use in clutch moments, what potions you have available, and where you are in relation to other mobs. Because if you had to run, the last thing you need is to pull another 2 mobs in. Each fight had impact. If I had to rate my experience of launch as a whole, it'd be good. Actually, before I continue, it's probably worth explaining the rating system I'll be using throughout the video and subsequent videos. Rubbish, no enjoyment whatsoever, hated every moment, poor, below expectations and in need of significant improvement. Okay, I'm glad I experienced it once, I wouldn't do it again though. Good, a genuinely enjoyable experience with only minor flaws. And enjoyable, top marks, I'd happily do it all over again. Tank Noob's journey to level 60 was a roller coaster of emotions. I was happy, frustrated, proud, bored, angry, pretty much anything you could think of. I felt it. Overall, my journey to 60 took about a month, with me playing every single day. In total, on Classic, I have about 1,000 hours, with 600 being on Tank Noob, before they transferred him to the Burning Crusade without my consent, and therefore deleted him from the Classic server. At the time, Molten Core hadn't been released yet, so there was a server-wide competition to reach max level, get geared, so that your guild could become the first to raid. Combat in Classic is simple. Most of what you're doing, and especially at the lower levels, is auto-attacking, whilst weaving the occasional ability whenever you could. You'd stick to the same combo and skills. By modern standards, it is very basic and not thrilling, but I give it a lot of leeway because the game was built in the early 2000s, where the internet connections were slower, computers were far less powerful and reliable, and Blizzard wanted to run the game on the average family PC. That design philosophy shaped almost everything. What I really loved about this game is that when you're in a town, you feel safe, comfortable. But when you're solo and venture out to the world, it's dangerous. There is a real sense of urgency and calculation whenever you pull a mob. But what's weird is the moment you team up with somebody, everything changes. I'm checking the corners of my screen to calculate an aggro ranges between mobs. Suddenly, I'm charging into a pack of enemies, shield up, spamming /yell to emote on them, as the healer is blessing me and damage dealers are coming at the enemy from all sides. With a good party, you feel unstoppable. It's incredible. Every fight, I feel like I'm actually there in the game, like a hero, and that is where WoW Classic shines. From the perspective of an Alliance member, the first 20 levels feel almost magical. You begin in places like Elwyn Forest, Dunmar, and from there the world unfolds naturally before you. Each zone flows seamlessly into the next, gently guiding you across the kingdom without ever feeling overly scripted. There is a perfect sense of progression as you get stronger each day. It's a testament to the incredible world design and attention to detail that the developers poured into this wonderful game. Now, I've played a bit of Undead, and if I ever were to roll Horde, I'd 100% choose them because they look cool and their lore is awesome. I also love their canalized racial ability. What I find cool is that whilst I have about 1000 hours in this game, there is still a whole portion of the game that I don't know. I find that so cool. Few games can make the world feel that vast, decades after release. Having played Classic for a good 1000 hours now, I've realised why I keep coming back to this game. It isn't just the world, the combat, or the nostalgia. It's the way the game approaches progression. In Classic, you need to be a team player. You cannot progress in this game without a team. From the first few levels, you learn that you're stronger with other players in a party than alone. This is done by introducing elite enemies that are simply too powerful to conquer on your own. Even if you are a brilliant player, you won't be able to progress to endgame without some help from other players. This is where the magic of Classic lies. I've met countless mates from this game. For example, I remember when I was about level 10, it was early in the morning and I was trying to complete an important quest by taking on an elite mob. I kept dying, then running back, dying, then running back. That was until a priest appeared. He helped me defeat it. I didn't even ask him. Before he took off, I knelt in front of him and I thanked him for his service and offered my service as a tank whenever he needed it. 10 levels later, he accepted, and that little interaction formed a friendship that carried us through to the end game. Eventually, we played Mortal Core together. Stuff like that is beautiful. It's rare to have that kind of interaction in any other MMOs. Over the years, the developers started to fix the game. They sorted out bugs, balanced classes, changed how XP works, leveling. Retail is now at a point where it is soloable. You don't need to go out looking for friends. You turn on some trance music, click a button, boom, you're at the end game content in seconds. It's easy to see how it became like this. A lot of the features in Classic and its game design, it is frustrating. Say you've got work in a few hours, but you want to do a few quests, or maybe even do a dungeon. You're going to have to find players, get ready. All of that is just time consuming. These changes were quality of life improvements. They make the game more accessible, which is a good thing arguably. But they also take away what made the game incredible, which is that reliance on your fellow players. For me, personally, I don't believe in some of those changes. I love working with others. It's why I play MMOs. If I wanted to play alone, I'll play a single RPG game. When every challenge can be completed by yourself in an MMO, other players become background scenery. They're just people you walk past. You don't even say hello. The greatest moments I've had in Classic aren't finding epics or completing a world first raid. It's the friendships I've made from overcoming a difficult objective. I genuinely loved playing Classic, but I can't ignore its flaws. And there are quite a few. Firstly, classes can be a bit of a mess. Every class has multiple specializations. A warrior can choose between a tank or 2 damage dealing trees. A priest can heal or deal damage, and so forth. The problem is that some specializations are simply not viable. Certain specs are much weaker than others, and that they become effectively unplayable in the endgame content. Not to mention some classes can outperform others in certain situations. And some classes even get benefits over others. For example, paladins and warlocks get their mounts for free. But this is due to lore, so that's okay. Though it can feel irritating when you're grinding for gold, whereas your mate just breathes and he gets his for free. But I do get that balancing an MMO is difficult. There are so many variables you have to account for, so it's far beyond my expertise. However, if a game gives multiple ways to play a class, every one of those options should feel worthwhile. Then you've got the endgame grind. Contrary to what people outside the game might think, Classic isn't mechanically difficult. It's demanding because it's time consuming. To keep up with guild raids, you're expected to spend hours every week farming gold, consumables, resistant gears and world buffs. Later in Classic, world buffs become mandatory. If you wanted to raid with a serious guild, you had to put the time in. And if you died before or during those raids, the buffs disappeared, potentially hurting your entire raid's performance. And that creates a huge amount of pressure on you. Guild leaders expect everyone to be prepared. Suddenly the game stops feeling like an adventure game and starts feeling like a second job. And if you mess up or don't put the time in, you'll get the finger pointed at you. And there goes your chance to get gear. I remember logging into Classic after work. I spent the rest of the day grinding resources, completing the raid, and then repeating the exact same cycle again the following week. It was because of that monotony that I gave up. The loot system is another issue that I have with Classic. 40 people can spend hours clearing a raid, only for the boss to drop 2 or 3 items. Your class might not even use them, but if it does, you may lose that role due to a lower priority or just not having enough raid points to get it. You can spend weeks raiding without getting a single upgrade. Now, I won't lie, but this is part of the reason why I became a main tank for my guild, because it meant I could have a good chance to get loot. Personally, I prefer Retail's approach to looting. You receive loot individually and can have the chance to trade it with another person before a certain amount of time. I think that works. It's fair, especially for the people who don't have endless hours to raid every week. Inventory management is an issue, especially for leveling. Soul shards take up space, arrows, bullets and pet food take up space, quest items take up space. Combine that with early game bags being small, and you've got a recipe to annoy your player base. I've spent a good few hours having to rearrange my bags, auction stuff, just to make room. It's very tedious. Then there's respecking. Imagine you spent the week tanking dungeons and your mate messaged you saying they'd like you to join their group. They have a tank, so they need a damage dealer instead. In Classic, the patch at launch, you could not dual spec. That meant you had to spend gold to change your spec. Each respec becomes more expensive until it reaches a cap of 50 gold. They eventually combated this issue by having dual specs in the later patches and anniversary editions. PvP also has its own issues too. The original ranking system was notoriously cruel. There were 14 ranks, and to achieve the max rank you had to spend about 12 hours plus per day in order to grind battlefields again and again and again. At the highest levels it was less about individual skill and more about organised communities coordinating honour gains. It was an incredibly unhealthy system that rewarded time commitment rather than player ability. Classic has flaws, tons of them, but the strange thing is that some of the flaws made the game special. Take travel for example. On paper and execution, it's a horrible idea because it's slow. Even after getting your first mount, it takes time. And quests often send you back and forth in a repetitive way. But I remember classic Azeroth so well that I don't even need a map to get to most places. And also, don't forget those little player interactions and PvP moments that happen out of the blue, all made possible by that system. I found random objects whilst going about my journey, which led to quests and led to me learning more about the game and the world history. And let's not forget, this world has been handcrafted to leave a mark on you. So when you're going through mountains, forests, it's cinematic. You feel like you're actually in a living, breathing world. Also, having the expensive mounts. Only classic players will know the horrible feeling of having to cop a pinch for a mount. It's difficult, but rewarding. When you first summon that mount, you feel like a hero. That progression is so satisfying as it's done in small increments over a long period of time. A lot has changed since 2019, and for the most part, the game is going in the right direction. But it makes me appreciate how fantastic vanilla may have been for the players at launch. World of Warcraft Classic is a journey. From level 1 to 60, your character grows from humble beginnings to become a faction powerhouse. And so do you as a player. You learn the class, explore the world and history, make mistakes, make friends, you gain rivals, and gradually earn better gear. Reaching level 60 doesn't feel like you've crossed the finish line. It feels like you're graduating from college. From my experience with MMOs, the end game is where all of the content tends to be, and your duty is to get there if you want to have fun. But in Classic, for me, the real beauty lies in the journey to level 60, and hitting the end game doesn't feel like the start. It represents a new chapter in the game, which I think is the way to do it. Dungeons are a massive part of the journey, as they hold best in slot equipment and are required to complete some quests. However, they aren't 15-minute activities that you jump into. They are genuine adventures that could easily last an hour or two. Item upgrades weren't handed out every few minutes either. You had to run the same dungeon 10 or 20 times chasing a single item. When it dropped and you won your role, it felt incredible. I remember running Black Rock Depths around 300 times trying to get Ironfoe. I never got it, but that obsession was simply part of Classic's progression. If you wanted the very best equipment, you had to be patient, consistent, determined, and prepared for the long grind. But back then I was young, unemployed, so I had time to dedicate. Now, absolutely not. Which is why I mentioned the loot system as a negative previously. The endgame is rich with things to do. You have to gear up, and there are so many quests available to complete. Then there are raids, PvP. It is endless. And because World PvP is a thing in Classic, you can get hundreds of hours more out of the game, even after you reach 60, which is what I did. WoW Killer is a term that is used to describe an up-and-coming MMO that has the potential to overtake World of Warcraft as the most successful game in the market. I have been hearing this term thrown about since World of Warcraft Burning Crusade was released. Every couple years, there is a startup that appears backed by wealthy folks stating that it will be the one to dethrone WoW. And it has always failed. Look at Ashes of Creation, which really lived up to its name. The amount of money going in at MMOs is insane. You've got Star Citizen that has already sunk $1 billion into the project, and whilst it is a pretty sick game, it doesn't come close to beating WoW in my opinion. New World had about 200 million sunk into it, and that's the start of a string of failures. Despite all of these options, why do we keep going back to a server of a game that was released in 2004? You already know the reason. It's because the game feels like home to us. When I got into Classic and it's nighttime and the music starts, you walk around, see people going about their journey, it feels really good. It's the same reason why you keep watching Lord of the Rings again and again and again. There is something special that just hasn't been done right, and it's captured in that moment in time. It's an easy formula when you boil it down to the core. You don't need insane graphics or kung fu style combat. All you need is a game that feels alive and promotes co-op between players. One that gives you a real sense of achievement when you've worked so hard to earn something. Why can't developers understand that? If anything, it's more cost effective because you don't have to pour millions into insane graphics. WoW's combat is repetitive and quite shallow. You spam autos, use cooldowns, use potions, use buffs, and that's it. The state of MMOs at the moment is insane. There are successes like Final Fantasy XIV, but the majority just fall short again and again. And after all these years, I don't know if there will ever be an alternative to WoW. Taking everything that I have said into account, I give this game an enjoyable rating, meaning that you should play it. Looking forward, there are talks of Classic Plus. I'm very interested to see how this develops. Hopefully they adjust on the loot system, because I think that it is one thing that retail does get right. Season of Discovery is pretty cool. I like the ideas they tried out. It was like a beta test for Classic Plus when you think about it. They're on the right path, so long as they keep their money grabbing techniques off the product. But yeah, if I had a clock I'll turn back in time, I'd tell myself, stop playing MapleStory, jump on WoW, you will not regret it. I'm Mem, and this is the game I should have played 20 years ago.